Hello and welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero. I kind of forgot how we made this decision. Did I? Wait.
Essentially, you'd asked me, or you had said that you'd wanted to go through some Martin Scorsese movies, and
that's right.
You would ask me for a pick from a list.
Right, because of Joker 2 being announced, and that obviously gonna be another Scorsese type. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Wow. All right, probably should have talked about this beforehand. Anyway, yeah, so we decided to watch a Martin Scorsese film, and you chose The Irishman, which was his last film from 2021, I think?
Yeah, I believe so. Either that or 2019. I forget the exact date.
Yeah, was that pre-pandemic? I'm not sure. Nope, 2019. My God, you're getting better at this than I am. Yeah, so we decided to watch The Irishman, the 2019 Martin Scorsese film with Robert DeNiro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino. A fucking fantastic cast, just by those three alone. And is, of course, directed by Martin Scorsese. First off, The Irishman is notable for two things. That is its cast, which is De Niro, Pacino, Pesci. Those three are like the killers in the room. And they have some really good supporting actors as well in the movie. But, you know, those three are like the top dogs. And that had a lot of people excited. The other is the length of the film, which is clocking in, I think it was 3 hours and 39 minutes. Which
it's an absolutely brutal length for anyone who's not used to real long movies.
Right, absolutely. My first question is going to be you before we actually talk about the how we felt about the film itself. Did you watch this in one sitting, or did you watch it in pieces?
Actually, I ended up watching it in one sitting.
Okay, that's cool. Some like film aficionados, as they would call themselves, they would say that you must watch it, sit through it from beginning to end in one sitting. And I get the mentality of it, but to be completely honest, there are some, like, for a near 4-hour film, you really have to prepare yourself to sit through that. I mean, I think the last 4-hour film I sat through was Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, which was from the 90s, I think. A beautiful film, but man, was that long. Holy shit.
Yeah, definitely, I would say, for anyone who's not really prepared for this, definitely sort of plan out when you plan to take a break to watch it in a spaced out sitting.
Right.
Especially just due to the length. It's an absolutely brutally long movie, just... So there's that, but yeah, I don't really think that there's a wrong way to watch it, but that's my personal opinion. So
I wonder if there's a Reddit guide from somebody who says, "Hey, break it apart this way. Like, watch it at this time to this time, stop, and then once you're done with that, then go from here to here, stop, and then you know what I mean? Like, do it that way." And I would have to look it up, but if we're in the middle of the recording, then probably not a good idea to do that now. But yeah, like there isn't really a wrong way to do it. My recommendation, though, is if you're going to break that up, don't watch another movie or TV show in between, because the film kind of needs you to be, I would say, enveloped in its world in order to actually get the maximum effect. So if you're gonna watch it and you're serious about watching it, you can break it up, but stick with that until you're done. Instead, like I know some people like to watch multiple TV shows at the same time. You might not want to do that with this. You might want to break it up, but you might want to just make sure you finish it before you start something else. Would be my...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. That much I would agree, especially since there's just so much information to track. There's just so many characters in the movie that you have to kind of remember who's allied with who. There's just so much world building that you have to keep track of, and I would be afraid that if you were to take a break and then watch like another TV show or another movie in between it, you're just going to lose all the details.
Right. So now that we've gotten through that, what are your thoughts of The Irishman?
As far as a movie, it's definitely not in my wheelhouse because I'm not much into gangster movies.
Oh, okay.
So I'll prelude with that, but the cast is outstanding, especially since all of the main folks who star in it are actually Italian Americans. So it was very interesting. Like the one scene in the beginning where you have Joe Pesci speaking in Italian, I was just like, "Whoa, holy cow! I didn't realize he could speak Italian. Holy shit!"
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool, especially where you have the scenes where they're speaking Italian to each other. That was kind of a cool sort of interaction because just I didn't realize that all the main stars are Italian American. I was just like, wow, okay, that's very cool. That puts all the context that with the whole Italian mob thing together. I know that the movie is essentially based off of some memoirs, and of course, because it's the memoirs of a hitman, there's naturally a lot of embellishment. So some things seem to be really, really drinking in the stylizing of just a mobster gangster movie and everything, especially like some of the assassinations.
Yeah.
Which, fair warning for anyone who is a bit squeamish. Some of the killings are pretty brutal.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I know I questioned you when I was about to start how brutal the killings were, and I think that the most brutal one was actually a chicken getting his head cut off, and I think another scene where a murder was done in slow motion, which honestly, when I saw it, was actually kind of cool, but it is brutal to watch to a certain extent. So, unless you have another pick on that one.
There was one killing towards the end. I want to say it was one of Tony Pro's guys. Right towards the end where he sees he sees one of or he sees Frank Sheeran and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And then just boom, shoots him in cold blood, and then just they kind of zoom up on the guy's face, and you just see the blood just coming out of his mouth and everything. I was like, wow, I could see that being a little bit much for anyone who's a bit squeamish. So,
yeah, I'd agree with you there. Yeah,
but overall, just the camera work was very interesting, especially considering that a lot of the main actors like Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro are quite old, and supposedly, at least from some of the stuff that I was reading, Martin Scorsese spent some serious money on like a triple camera rig setup to do some anti-aging CG magic.
yeah.
Which is just insane, because just especially some of the scenes where they go back to post World War II when the mobsters are much younger and everything. Just if you weren't thinking too hard about it, you could have sworn that it was just a really intense makeup job. But to think that it's just CG and camera magic was kind of interesting to see.
It was CG, camera magic, wigs, and makeup.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely sort of amazing work on just bringing down the age to the age of the mobsters to like their younger days in their 20s and 30s and everything, and then just as the movie goes on and on, just you get into where they're kind of old and geriatric and everything. So thought that was real interesting as well too. I will kind of mention this for anyone who does plan to watch this. There are parts of this movie that are very dry, very heavy in dialogue and drama.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not into kind of like internal politics and struggle, then the scenes where there's a lot of just debate on who controls which organization, they might get a little bit long on you. For me, that stuff is kind of fascinating, so I had fun with just kind of understanding just all the power struggles within each organization and everything.
Right. After a certain event happens, the film essentially goes down that rabbit hole of politics and stuff like that pretty quickly. So, and we'll get to spoilers as to what that is. You mentioned the de-aging process with De Niro specifically in this, and really all the specifically it was De Niro and Pesci have the de-aging process. Well, maybe Pacino too, to an extent. I had an issue with it, to be completely honest, but it turned out to be a minor issue in the end. At the time of filming this, De Niro was 77 years old, and in order to play Frank Sheeran, the way that I guess the story was meant to, they had to de-age him to be about 40 years old. Zero, I'm going to post something on our Discord right now. This is a photo of De Niro when he was in Raging Bull. He was about 38 years old. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm posting this because Frank Sheeran in the beginning of the movie is supposed to be 41. So I post this because you're supposed to believe that he has the physicality, the mannerisms, and the ability to be 41 years old in the movie while still being 78. And there is a dissonance big time in the movie, in the beginning at least, when this happens. The key example that this is not a spoiler, but there's a key example in the movie where Frank is attacking somebody in a grocery store, and it's a standard scene that Scorsese does, where the main character flies off the handle and just brutally attacks somebody. And in that scene specifically, it looks brutal in the wrong way. It looks like he is struggling physically to actually perform the scene. Do you know what scene I'm talking about?
I think.
Okay. I guess this really isn't a spoiler. It's a scene where Peggy comes home, and Peggy got in trouble with the grocer, and the grocer pushed her to the ground.
Oh, right.
And then what he did after that, that's what I'm talking about. That scene, after that scene, I was like, ooh, that, I don't know if that should have been in there. Like, that, like, it did not look believable at all that he's this brutal, tough mobster. It looked like a 60-year-old struggling to dominate somebody. It looked bad.
Yeah, that one, I can definitely agree, because it probably would have been better for them just to have gotten somebody who's able to be CG'd up to make the whole thing more believable. But who knows what they were thinking? I don't know.
You know what my honest opinion is? If you were going to go that route, have a different actor.
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
Just have a different actor. Like, no, don't even CG it. Just be like, this is Frank at 40. This is Frank at 60. This is Frank at 80. You can have a good wig job and stuff for Frank when he's 60, but 40, when you have to have some physicality, some strength, and some like dominating presence, it didn't like De Niro at that time would have done it. Like in the 80s, would have been perfect. But now, like, no, I had a real hard time, like, buying into it. And I was afraid that was going to be a problem throughout the film. It didn't, thankfully, but I wanted to note that. Yeah, De Niro had the most work done in this movie, and it kind of was obvious. Whereas with, let's say, Pesci, Pesci had a lot of work done too, but I was able to be believed into Pesci's de-aging process, and it did not be super distracting. It was distracting with De Niro. Like, I had so many I had a lot of problems with not with how they portrayed the character, but basically how they presented him with the makeup and the de-aging and everything. I just think that it would have been better if a younger actor would have taken that role and gone with it. It is my opinion on that route. So,
Oh yeah, and that's certainly a fair thought too, especially just because I mean I'm so used to mobster movies where they kind of go through like a chronology of like a gangster or something. They'll just sort of pick all sorts of different actors to play certain characters at certain timelines and stuff like that. So
yeah,
definitely just kind of a weird sort of thing for them to go, yeah, let's just go this way, and it's just like, well, if you went this other way, it could have stood to be better, more believable.
Yeah, I wonder what you think the best performance of the film is.
For me, I think I quite like Joe Pesci's performance.
Really? Okay.
Mostly because it gets into spoiler territory, but he starts off as a friend to De Niro's character Frank Sheeran, and then as the relationship evolves over time, it turns out that just the tables end up turned, and who ends up being the best friend ends up telling him to do a job that ends up completely turning everything upside down.
Yeah. His performance is rather quiet, and it's actually, yeah, of all the performances, it's a quiet, intense kind of, but still kind of a performance that shows how you should fear this man to a certain extent. And,
oh yeah.
And I really quite liked it. And this is not what I'm used to seeing Pesci as. Pesci is usually a hothead in most of the movies that he's in. And especially in Goodfellas, the movie he won his Oscar in. So to see him in this, he wasn't a hothead in Raging Bull, but to see him in this was really interesting, and to see how he tackled the performance. And the fact that it took Scorsese about 50 times to convince him to come out of retirement to be in the film. And it turned out really well. So, yeah, I like this performance too. My favorite is actually Pacino. Pacino, at this point in his career, does a lot of showy and bombastic performances. Ever since Scent of a Woman, I think, he went from being quiet, understated, and powerful to loud, bombastic, arrogant, and etc. And this is one of his better performances of that Pacino mold. He plays Jimmy Hoffa in this, and I think he played him really well. And Hoffa becomes probably one of the most dynamic characters in the movie, because you definitely see his flaws, but you definitely see a good in him, despite the fact that he's surrounding himself in all this bad. So the character was well written, but Pacino gives it the right amount of depth and performance that whenever he's on screen, they're always excellent scenes with Hoffa and Sheeran. So I really enjoyed his performance. I guess I'm just kind of surprised that De Niro's performance is really a straight man performance, where basically he's just a foil for all these dynamic characters. That's really all he is. And he ends up being, I guess, the most important character in the film because he's the main character, but he's just not a big personality in the movie. So I guess I was kind of surprised by that. Yeah. I had a problem with the length. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, duh, it's about 4 hours long. You should have a problem with the length. If a good movie is good, I mean, if it's really good and the length makes sense, then I don't have a problem with it. But there are 2-hour films that I watch, and I was like, yeah, I got a problem with how this was made. It should have been cut in certain ways. Like, I think my one example I use a lot is Moonlight. I really like Moonlight, but I would have said to cut the first and third act and expand on the second act, and you would have a better film. In this film specifically, I really think they should have just stayed with the relationship between Sheeran and Hoffa. And the reason why is because the plot, even though I think most of the movie is that plot, the plot moves so crisply and so well with the dynamic between Sheeran and Hoffa that you could have just made that the entire movie and been fine. Would that mean you would cut Pesci's performance? Yes. But I think it would have been a lot better off for the film. I'll even also say that the dynamics with Sheeran's family was, in the end, kind of pointless, despite having a good performance by Anna Paquin, who is really just silent in the film. But to a good effect, she's silent. But I also think that could have been cut. So, yeah, we'll get into spoilers as to where I think they should have ended the film and began it. But I think the length is a problem. But was I ever bored of the film? No. But I do look back at watching the film and going, yeah, the length was kind of unnecessary in this. And this was clearly a clearly self-indulgent movie for Martin Scorsese. It was something that he really wanted to do, and when he got it, he was going to do it his way, goddammit, and that's exactly what he did. And to a point, like, I was fascinated to watch that. But that doesn't exactly mean it makes it a great film. So I think that they should have edited this a lot more. I think the fact that this got an Oscar nomination for Best Editing is funny, though. I'll just say that. So, yeah. That's my feeling about the length.
Most of the points I feel that you'd made succinctly, and I'm in agreement for the most part.
So, did you have a problem with the length? I mean, were you bored? Were you...
Personally, I didn't have a problem with the length, mostly because, like I said towards the beginning, just I find sort of political struggle and intrigue sort of an interesting dynamic in movies.
Right.
So for me, just the dry talking pieces were interesting, but yeah, just there were some scenes that either could have been done a little bit more curt and crisper, but it definitely seemed like you had mentioned that Scorsese just really wanted to sort of indulge in the scenes and everything.
Yes. And to watch a master filmmaker do that is interesting in its own way, but oftentimes it does end up being a lesser quality film just in the enjoyment process. So, yeah, like I said, I still think it's a good movie. I think it would have been a lot better if someone were just to sit there and talk to Martin Scorsese and go, look, this would be better if it was 2 hours and 30 minutes, not 3 hours and 40. So let's hear me out, do this, and then tell me what you think. But anyway, I think one highlight I want to point to is the music. The first song that comes up, which is "Still of the Night," was a perfect choice to use it, like to start the film up, and the music. And this is a staple for Scorsese mobster films, specifically Goodfellas. They use music really well in his movies. So to see that was great. I mean, that's kind of the thing of this movie. It's a throwback to his '90s mobster movies, and with that thought process in mind, it's good. But I just look at it and just say that as good as it is, it could have been a lot better with a tight hand. So yeah, that's. Anything else you want to point towards before we get to spoilers?
Yeah, music is actually a great point that you mentioned because it seemed like each significant chapter in this whole saga was sort of footnoted with a song, and to me, just some of the choices were just so poignant and right on the nose.
Yeah. Like, do you think that is a good thing? Because most people look at on the nose being kind of bad, like cloying and obvious, or are you saying like it just fit the scene so perfectly?
I'm putting it more in the context of it fit the scene so perfectly.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Because it's just like oh wow, okay, so we're in the next chapter, aren't we?
Yeah.
And this is going to be sort of an allusion to the central themes of this next chapter. Okay, very interesting.
Right. Would you be interested in seeing other Scorsese films?
Yeah, I mean,
of this kind of topic, because he has other films that are not mobster films. He's just more well known for mobster films.
Yeah, I mean, while the mobster films aren't really my biggest forte, just I would still be interested in seeing some of Scorsese's other films, especially since just he's got sort of an interesting style to him, with especially with just some of the scenes to sort of emphasize a point. I definitely wouldn't write out Scorsese's films in the future for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Scorsese is you could and you'd be wrong. You can't deny that he is a really good director. He knows how to shoot a frame. He knows how to tell a story within that frame and make it dynamic and personable, and just like I think Taxi Driver is his best film, but like he just knows how to make everyman, or not even just everyman, but just people on the fringes of society, and make him to be compelling, dynamic characters. And he just does such a good job in these films. This is a good movie, but I guess, like I said, I think if someone had a stronger hand to tell him to stop at certain parts, it would have been better. But as the film is, it's good. I like it. So, and it does show off Scorsese's strengths very well in this. So, yeah. Anything you want to add?
No, I think we're probably good to go into spoilers.
Okay, all right. So at this point, we're going to go into spoilers for The Irishman. If you haven't seen it and you want to, you can stop now and come back later. Yeah, and we'll count it down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We can go on to a lot of different aspects of this movie. I think I talked a lot about what I would edit out, and I'll start with that. The whole beginning part where he met Pesci's character and his dynamic with his wife and his kids. Like, I'm talking about, I think the first 30 minutes of the film, I'd cut that out completely. I also would take out any mention of the daughters. Like, I cut that out completely, too. That would also mean, like, the last 30 minutes of the movie, gone.
Right.
Like, they're interesting to, how do I put this? If this was a TV series, and this was, like I say, a 10-episode TV series, I would kind of get why they would add that. But because it's a 3.5, 4-hour film, some things have to be let go. And I really feel, again, as good as Anna Paquin's performance is as Peggy, who I think is really the daughter that I think Sheeran is attached to most in the film. As good as that performance is, it's kind of wasted in a plot that really has little depth to it. Does it show a sad part in the end of Sheeran's life? Yeah, but even then, here's how I would end the film. After they kill Hoffa, spoilers. I mean, but yeah, you kind of figured that was going to happen. After they kill Hoffa in the movie, going towards, let's say, the blowback of what happens, I would say probably the best way to end it was to end with the phone call with Joe Hoffa, and then the conversation with Joe Pesci about how it had to be done. He forced our hand, and this is just what we have to do. It's either us or him, and it wasn't going to be him. And then end the film. And I think it would have been great that way. The fact that they didn't, and they went through, I guess, those two characters, Pesci and DeNiro's character in prison, and which wasn't long, and him in a retirement home, and him falling down, and him trying to reconnect with his daughters and stuff like it just seemed like Scorsese was trying to grasp at something deeper that either was taken out beforehand or that just wasn't processed as well as he thought it was. So I really think this would have been cut to about 2 hours 20, 2 hours 30 by just getting rid of those parts. And I think you would have a tighter, better film. That's my opinion. I'm of the opinion that the tighter a movie is, the better. Like, if you can do something succinctly in 10 minutes, there's no reason to spend 30 minutes on it. That's my opinion. So, some will disagree, and I understand, but that's my feeling of specifically this movie. That this could have definitely been cut into some certain aspects.
Yeah, and those are fair thoughts as well too.
Okay.
I can definitely see the counterpoint being just more, hey, we want to try to highlight some of the significant parts of Frank Sheeran's story from the memoirs. I heard you like to paint houses.
Yes.
So I get I can understand the perspective where the counterpoint would be, hey, this is to kind of focus on some of the events, like the falling out that he had with his daughter, him having to pick his alliances towards the end when he's ordered to kill Jimmy Hoffa, and at the same time trying to be a good family friend to Joe Hoffa, and all the other stuff too. Just so I can definitely see where someone would have the counterpoint of, hey, the movie's long because it is what it is. You've got all these significant life events that they want to highlight, but at the same time, maybe you could tighten up those events in a sense better. At least that's kind of where I stand. I'm kind of at a halfway point of, I get the importance of those events, but maybe you could do less on indulging some scenes to tighten up these other scenes, and maybe you could cut things down a little bit while still providing all the context. That's kind of how I feel on it.
Right. I will admit that one of the important scenes around Jimmy Hoffa in the film is the fact that Peggy, as a little girl, warms up and opens up to him. I think it was the scene in the miniature golf course that they had in the film where Peggy, a character that did not talk, or barely talked, I should say, was opening up to Jimmy Hoffa, and and both the child actor and Pacino did that scene really well. Like it was really heartwarming to see this little girl who clearly fears her father. Not that she fears that her father is going to do something to her. She fears what her father is capable of and what he will do to somebody for her, which is why she is so reserved and why she is so quiet. And the fact that she warms up to Hoffa so much, it was heartwarming, and it really connected you to Hoffa as the character in the movie. And then when eventually the disappearance / murder happens, the only line that you hear that character say, which was played by Anna Paquin, is, "Why didn't you call Joe?" And it hits like a freight train. It really does. It really works. So I'm well aware that by cutting that out, you're cutting out a specifically powerful film, a specifically powerful scene that would have a payoff and an impact later. My contention is basically that, as well as it does pay off, it doesn't pay off to the entirety of the film. It doesn't really, how do I say this? It doesn't make the film more cohesive and dynamic overall. It's just an interesting scene. It's a very well done scene that's in a film that I think in a couple of years I would have to remind myself is there, because it's completely antithetical to what the rest of the movie is about. Because the rest of the movie is about Fred Sheeran, his days as a hitman, and his rise in organized crime, and his rise as a Teamster president, and the downfall from there on when he decides that he has to kill Hoffa. That's what the film is about. Like the family aspects of like his daughters and his wife just don't mean much in this movie. And I know some of you will be like, well, then write more about the family. Then you're asking for an extra hour of film. So I think at that point, I would just be like, cut it. And just, yes, you'd be losing out on good scenes, but directors do this all the time. They have scenes that they would love to put in movies that are really good-looking scenes. So you don't force that in order to, because it's a great scene. You recognize that as much as a great scene it is, it just doesn't service the overall plot. So you have to cut it. And that's my feeling. Like, the family aspects just don't fit into the overall plot between Sheeran and Hoffa, which I think is the main plot point of the movie. And you don't get to that main plot point until about 45 minutes to an hour. So, my opinion, again, basically, cut that extra stuff, leave it with Hoffa and Sheeran, and go from there, is my opinion on that.
Definitely a fair point as well, too. Just, yeah, I could definitely see just things being hotly debated on how and where to make the cuts, because everyone's going to have a different opinion.
That's true. That's true.
On which places would be better, which places would not be so great. So,
would you cut it? Would you cut the film?
I'd probably cut down some of the more indulgent scenes a little bit, and then maybe tighten up some of the scenes that seem to drag on a little bit longer than they needed to be.
Okay.
That way, just sort of things and points that are supposed to be made aren't drawn out for too long.
Hmm.
and just things are more succinct. But I'm kind of halfway in the mindset of cutting stuff and keeping everything in. So that's kind of where I fall.
Okay, so you're asking for maybe cutting 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of the movie by just taking some of the admittedly well shot scenes, but because it doesn't move the plot along much, to cut those out and just move the plot along a little bit more. You're more of the lines of tighten up the aesthetics than tighten up the plot. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty much where I'm at with
Okay.
the debate on cutting and keeping.
Got it. Okay. I can understand that. We mentioned in the review about De Niro. I mentioned, I should say, about De Niro and the aging process and the de-aging and the wig. Yeah, throughout the film, I was distracted constantly about like in the middle of the film, I was like, how old is Sheeran supposed to be in this? And when I looked it up, it said 41. I was like, oh, they didn't do a good job. They did not do it. But and I kind of understand why they did it, because De Niro's a fantastic actor. Like you can't deny that. He's a really good actor, and if you have De Niro, you want De Niro to be in your damn film as much as possible. I get it. But he can't play somebody half his age. You know? And the scene that we talked about is the scene where he attacks the grocer, stomps his hand, and breaks his hand on the pavement. And at no point did I believe he had the strength to do that. Like, he was struggling to put his leg up in the scene to give it that impact, to make it seem like he hurt somebody. He struggled in that scene, clearly. So I just don't. But that really is the only scene where I watched that and went, ooh, yeah, I'm not believing he's 40 there. Nah. But the wig work, the makeup work is good. I think it was better with Pesci than it was with De Niro. To me, honestly, I would have just recasted with different characters at that point. Like, I would have just said, De Niro will be played by Timothy Chalamet, as a joke. But yeah, I would have recast those characters when they were younger. Like, maybe I would have Bobby Cannavale, who played a character in the film, playing De Niro's character when he is 40, and then age it up to where De Niro is in his 50s and 60s and playing Sheeran. I don't know. I just think as a 40-year-old, it didn't compute well with me. I just felt like, this doesn't work as well as you think it does. Like, I kind of, it's weird. Like, I always had a problem with younger people playing older and wearing makeup and bodysuits. But I prefer that more than what they did with De Niro in this. Like, I would have probably rather had a younger person play Sheeran and then age him up later than have De Niro play the character, even though he's perfect for it, and then de-age him. That's my opinion on that.
Me, I'm of the same mind that it probably would have been a little bit more believable if they just hired younger actors for the younger versions of the characters,
mm-hmm.
and then just keep folks like De Niro and all them with the camera tech for aging them down to like 60 and stuff like that.
Right.
So, because I know one of my favorite Asian movies kind of does this with having different actors cast for different different ages of the gangsters and mobsters that are depicted in this. I don't know who all's watched this or not, so people may not be familiar with the title, but it did inspire an American version of the movie. And
You're talking about Infernal Affairs, aren't you?
correct.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have interrupted you, but yes, I remember this film.
Yep. So, because just in that one, the second movie in the trilogy covers the early lives of the mobsters and cops who are involved in the struggle, being the mole in the opposing organizations that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And they picked actors that had very similar facial structures and everything to the current day versions of the actors and everything. So, and that's the approach that I probably would have taken if you were to just go back in time and completely recast the Irishman. That would probably be the approach that I would rather have taken than the whole camera, makeup, and wigs de-aging tact.
And this would have helped with the budget. The budget is $170 million for this.
Wow.
Like, that's a lot. Like, okay, someone will say, is that really a lot of money for movies? Yes, it is. Like, it is. Especially for a Scorsese film where actors will want to be in the film and will be willing to do it for less. Like, I guess, like, well, I'm thinking about it right now. And if you would have told Bobby De Niro to say, hey, take a pay cut to be in a Scorsese film, it's like, I made Scorsese. Like, fuck you.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, like actors like Keitel, maybe not, well, I would say yes, Keitel, Bobby Cannavale, Stephen Graham. If you would have gauged them honestly, they would have said, like Jonah Hill did in Wolf of Wall Street, to work with Scorsese, I'll do it for free. Like, he's that type of director that has gotten a reputation of making such great quality films that just to be there, I will do it for the minimum. Fine, I don't care. I'll do it. Like, he's that type of director. The fact that the film is $170 million, I'm suspecting is because of this technology. And it just doesn't work as well as it should. And yeah, I'm in agreement with you that I think they should have just hired different actors to play the roles. So yeah, my suggestion would have been hire the younger actors and put them in makeup later on for them being older. So yeah, like God, anything else you want to add? Like, you want to talk about in spoilers? This is a long ass movie, dude. So there's a lot that happens. So
yeah,
if you got it, let's go with it.
Yeah. As mentioned, pre-spoilers. Just for me, the political intrigue in this movie was it was there in the spades.
Yes.
So for anyone who doesn't mind sort of the world building that they do in the beginning to kind of set up the context for, just who knows who's affiliated with who, and so on and so forth, then yeah, just this movie will give you all that in the spades.
Right.
So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, if you're going to compare it to, like I say, a Scorsese film from the past, this is more Casino than it is Goodfellas. Goodfellas does have that political intrigue, but it takes a back seat to a lot of interesting things happening in the film. A lot of crime is shown, a lot of violence is shown, things like that. Whereas in Casino, it gets into more of the political intrigue that is involved in what happens in the film. So it's more Casino than it is Goodfellas, I would say. Go ahead, Keep going. I'm sorry.
So, but yeah, just it was kind of fascinating, sort of keeping up with all the details in Frank Sheeran's life and everything. Just he goes from just being a former soldier in the U.S. military to being a delivery driver who is doing some small time stuff for the gangs, and ends up finally being picked up by the Bufalino family, and then from the Bufalino family getting involved with the Teamsters Union, and then just the political struggle of just who's taking control of the Teamsters Union, and then the drama behind just who is controlling the retirement funding, and then you have Fitz pretty much just giving interest-free loans to whoever basically asks, and then just leading to the downfall of Jimmy Hoffa, and then sort of to kind of add to the whole denouement, just you've got Sheeran falling out with his daughters and everything, and in his old age, trying in vain to sort of reconnect with his daughters to, I guess in a sense, absolve himself of his sins. And when that doesn't work, just you get to sort of the end where he's trying to make peace with God, with sort of talking things out with a priest and everything. And then you get to the end where he has what could be implied as sort of his final confession before he passes away. And then you have the end where he replicates an old habit of Jimmy Hoffa and tells the priest, hey, can you leave the door open just a little bit when you leave? Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't have much to add about that. Thought popped into my head as you were talking. The story and the characters are fascinating. They are, and it's clear as rain as to why Scorsese wanted to do this film. Like, it's clear. Like, at no point was I like, why would you want to do this? Like, it was clear. Like, you could tell that this is a quality story that needs to be told. My feeling is that when Scorsese is retired and he's gone and no longer with us, someone's going to remake this movie. Do I have proof as to it's going to happen? No. But I think a filmmaker is going to look at this and go, I can do this better. And they're going to remake this. Because this is not a perfect movie. This is not... And I think that is the consensus. Like, people really like the movie, but it's far from perfect. I think this could have been so much better than it was. And it's not it sounds like a knock against the film. It really, well, I guess it kind of is, now that I'm thinking about it. But it's a good movie, but I just decisions that were made in this is to the detriment of the film. And I can't help but look at it and go, this is a pre-production problem. This is a problem that was made before a single frame was shot, in my opinion. Because I honestly, it's strange. I can go through the entire film in my head right now, and with the exception of the one scene that I was talking about with the grocer, I can't come up with anything that I would say are bad scenes. They're shot real well. They're acted real well. But I still have that niggling feeling that this could have been done better. That there should have been, like, something's missing or something's wrong that could have been improved upon. It's really strange because if I can't come up with the scenes, I can't really prove that there's a problem. But I just feel like the skeleton is the problem of this. The decisions beforehand were the problem. It's just that they did a really good job with what they had, and I just feel like they could have had better with what they had, or they could have done better with everything beforehand. Is my feeling of it. Like you can go over a lot of the scenes in this, and I get the feeling you really like this movie, and I can't argue that they're not quality. Like I can't argue that, but I still think it's handicapped in a certain way. So I don't know. I really don't know what else to say in this.
Yeah.
Is there any other scenes in the film that you want to discuss?
I think at the lead up to the betrayal of Hoffa was just really interesting because, of course, just you've got like a real dynamic political scene where just Hoffa gets up during the congratulations dinner for Frank Sheeran, and basically says, hey, who was the guy that helped solve all your problems? I was the guy.
Yep.
And sort of rallies up the crowd. So if you didn't know sort of the history of Jimmy Hoffa, you probably would have been fooled to thinking, oh man, things are turning up. Cool. It sounds like he's gonna get control of his union back, and just it sounds like he's getting the band together. Everything's going good, and then of course you've got basically just all the other mobsters sort of saying, hey, just he's quickly becoming a problem. This is not something we're happy with, and you and the mobsters sort of quietly telling Frank, hey, you gotta tune him down, or we're gonna get rid of him. Just and then of course in some of those scenes you just see Frank basically just begging them, going, hey, just can you you have to understand, I'm trying my best to convince this guy to like chill out, back off, and just quietly retire in peace with his retirement fund.
Yeah,
he's not having it. And then of course then it gets to Joe Pesci's character, Russell, and basically just Russell kind of says, hey, I'm telling you because you're my friend, but you need to tell him to knock it off, or we're gonna have to knock him off.
Yeah.
And
I think the line is, it is what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
And then of course then you get towards the end where just Frank is pretty much given the job to ice his own boss off, and basically just Russell kind of gives him the bad news, going, hey, we're giving the job to you because we know that if we were to give the job to anyone else, you would probably be the first one to tell Jimmy that there's a hit out on him. So you're the guy who's got to do the dirty work. And it was like we said, it is what it is. But he obviously didn't get the hint. So you're going to be the one to put him down.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of where just the best friend dynamic turns to, hey, this I tried to tell you as a friend so many times to tell this dude to back off, but now that he won't, it's now become a business transaction. So you got to get the job done or else.
I really feel in that whole sequence, the sequence where Frank comes off the plane, drives past Hoffa to the house where it's going to happen, drives back, picks up Hoffa, drives to the house, and then pops him. I mean, a good amount of that scene could have been cut. Like,
oh yeah,
is that what you're talking about when you say like pare down the aesthetics or pare down certain scenes? Like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. Like, I agree that scene specifically, you could have had your point by Russell pretty much telling Frank, you're doing this. Frank picking him up. Hoffa alluding that he's late and how much he hates people who are late and blah, 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 blah. Him going to the house, popping him twice, and then that's it. I mean, it would have had the same effect to me. So I because they build up the friendship so much in the movie that the betrayal of Frank doing that to Jimmy would have hit the same way either way. So I have to agree with that. But yeah, as we're talking about it, I'm seeing bits and pieces that I'm like, that could have been cut to, that could have been pared down a bit. Like, it's sad, really, to a certain extent, because what is there is quality. What is there is really good, and I'm going to end up recommending the movie, but not as much as I thought I would. I would say so. Anything else?
No. I mean, just I think most of the points that I have to make are just more just. I just love the political intrigue in this movie.
Yes,
and for anyone who's really into that, then yeah, you're probably gonna have a great time with this movie.
Yeah. So, final recommendation then?
Yeah, final recommendation.
Okay. I'll start then. I mentioned it in the spoilers, and overall, The Irishman is a good, and at some points, great movie. Comparatively to Scorsese's films, it's not going to be in his top 3 at all. But if you really like his 90s mobster movies, which is Goodfellas and Casino, this is essentially a throwback to those, and it's a very well made version of those. But be prepared for the length. It's very self-indulgent. They use a lot of style in the movie. It's really drawn out in certain aspects. I think a key scene we didn't mention was the shooting that was done in slow motion, where you can see the bullet hit the head and the blood spurting out. As cool as that scene was, that was unnecessary, to be completely honest. But overall, it's a good movie. It is an interesting movie that it's a movie I would love to hear more opinions of. Because I get the feeling that whoever you speak to are going to have wildly different opinions of the movie. But I think the opinion will always stand that it's a good movie. But they'll just have issues of the movie that is going to be different for everybody. And it will tell more about the person than what they like in movies. Which I hope we show very well in discussing this movie. So, would I recommend to see the movie? Yes. Be prepared with the length, and just know that it's not perfect. But the performances are great. Specifically, Pacino is my favorite. Pesci is good. I'll even say Paquin is very good in this, despite her getting no lines. But yeah, it's a flawed film, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it. I was really never bored. I was never really looking at the time, seeing how much longer it is. I enjoyed the film for what it is. I just think I just think someone should have came in and nipped and tucked a little bit to make it a tighter film. So yeah, I recommend it. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. I will definitely recommend this movie, but I will add the caveat of, with my recommendation is, be forewarned. There's a lot of political intrigue. There are a lot of dialogue scenes.
Right.
This isn't like an action movie where you've just got killing after killing after killing. The killings are very, very deliberate, and just if you're fine with the fact that this is going to be more of a political power struggle sort of movie, then yeah, you're probably going to have a great time. I'm of the mind that there's really no wrong way to watch it, be it if you take a break because it is a 3 hour and 39-minute movie, or if you decide to just say, you know what, I'm just going to clear almost 4 hours out of my day, sit down and watch this thing.
Right. Don't pay attention to people who say the right way to do it is this. You have a right way to do it. If you have a certain way that you want to space it out, space it out. But I would just recommend that if you're going to space it out, watch nothing else until it's over. That's my recommendation.
Oh yeah, and I would recommend that as well too, especially just on top of the political power struggle that pretty much envelops this entire film. There's just a lot of world building to keep up with. Just Frank Sheeran and his history with the Buffalino crime family, the Teamsters Union, the power struggles within the Teamsters, so on and so forth. There's just so much to work through with regards to the world building information. And yeah, I would be afraid that if you were to take a break and say, you know what, let me take a break, let me watch something like, a couple episodes of The Simpsons to kind of break the tension off, I think you would just lose so much of the world building and just go, oh shit, who's that guy again? Shit, I can't fucking remember.
Yeah. I will probably never recommend this website again. So take this and frame it if you want. There's an article on Scream Rant that is how to watch The Irishman as a miniseries. They take it into 4 episodes and they give you times at which to stop. I would recommend reading this article and going at that way and watching it if you want to break it apart. So there, you have your guide. If you want to break this apart into 4 parts, go right ahead. Do that. Then you may find yourself saying, I actually want to watch this entirety right now. But there's your option. There you go. All right, Zero. So we're at the end of the review. I got the feeling this was going to be lengthy, like the movie itself. But I think people will enjoy what we talked about. Because, like I said, this is a movie that I think has a lot of divisive opinions. And it just shows how interesting film can be when it comes to watching movies and what people get out of it. But what's most important right now, Zero, is I have a question for you.
All right.
Okay, so the original question was going to be, since we're watching a gangster movie, what is your favorite gangster movie? Now, you already said that you don't watch much gangster movies. So I'm going to open it up a bit and say, what is your favorite crime movie? So it could be a movie about the police side. It could be about the criminal side. You can even add heist movies if you want. I'll allow that. But what is your favorite movie about crime?
For me, that will always come back to just something from the Hong Kong Cantonese movie scene, and that's going to be the Infernal Affairs trilogy.
Yep.
Just, it's interesting because while it is a crime movie, there are very heavy Buddhist themes in it, which, for me as a very lax secular Buddhist, I thought was really interesting, especially just when the movie starts out with a Buddhist quotation that of all the hells that there are in Buddhism, eternal hell is always the worst.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a reference that just with the 2 main characters both being moles in opposing organizations, that they're basically sort of in a form of eternal hell, that they're masquerading on who they're supposed to be, but at the same time denying who they really should be, and that in a form is its own form of eternal hell. That, and well, just the performances of Andy Lau and Tony Leung are excellent in that movie.
God, like Tony Leung is such an underrated actor. I mean, I know people in America don't watch a lot of foreign language films, but he just, there probably is a bad film with him, but I've failed to see one yet. So,
yeah,
okay.
And I think really just the one thing that I really liked about his performance in Infernal Affairs, especially part 1, is just when he has sort of his psychotic break, and he's just like, I hate this. I'm losing my identity. I'm supposed to be a fucking cop, and I've been stuck with the mob with promises that, just I'm gonna finally get out of this racket, and just you guys keep fucking sending me in. Just I'm through. I want out. Just you could almost feel the frustration just in his delivery of those lines in Cantonese Chinese and everything. And I was just like, man, I heard from him. Holy cow, that is one hell of a delivery. So
Yeah.
just really really great performance from him in that movie. And then Cantonese pop star Kelly Chen plays the psychologist in the movie, and just always love her since she can kind of nail the gentle, sympathetic soul sort of archetype really well, and just I just loved her performance in that too. So yeah, just of all the crime movies, that would probably be just my top favorite, just the entire trilogy.
Okay. It's strange. One of my favorite movies of all time is Fargo, and that is technically a crime movie. But the way I love Fargo, the crime in it kind of doesn't count. It's weird. Like, I'd have to make you watch that one day. But honestly, the best movie about crime is The Godfather Part 2. Some may be surprised I didn't say The Godfather, because The Godfather is considered one of the best films of all time, and it's deserved. It is. But Godfather Part 2 does something that few films really do right, and is to have two different stories running concurrently about two different people and make it fit so well together that it belongs in a film of its own. The story is about a young Vito Corleone, played by DeNiro, who is trying to rise up the ranks in organized crime in, I think it's set in the 40s, I think. I'm not entirely sure. And then it also is coincide with his son Michael's rise to power as the Don of the Italian Mafia in America in the 60s, I think. I gotta reread that. I'm not entirely sure. And the father-son dynamic works well. The differences of approach, the differences in how the mob works at the time, just works so well in the movie that it just ends up being a much richer and much more well-made film in the end. Like, it is one of the few sequels that surpasses the original. And some will disagree, but they won't disagree with the fact that it is a great movie. It really is. And I think with crime in itself, I would use gangster films. It is the best gangster film ever made, in my opinion. I haven't seen Infernal Affairs yet. I've wanted to since The Departed came out, but yeah, I think it's The Godfather Part 2, to be absolutely honest. So yeah.
Yeah, and kind of a fair warning for anyone who's considering picking up Infernal Affairs as a trilogy. I would definitely advise caution if you choose to get the localized Western version of it. Mostly because just with some movies, they sort of take some creative liberties with cutting stuff around, kind of like what I had sort of mentioned with our previous review with the Grandmaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I would advise, if possible, try to seek out the Hong Kong release of the movie, the entire trilogy. That is, that way you can see the movie without any sort of context lost.
Right. Just to note, if you do that, do you need a region-free player in order to do that?
Not necessarily.
You don't?
Mostly because Hong Kong region movies are technically region 1.
Oh, are they? Okay.
So yeah, usually you won't have to worry about it. Usually, if it's something like it's a region 2 Blu-ray or DVD, then at that point, yeah, you will need to be concerned about that. But on at least with PCs equipped with disk drives or USB disk drives, then you can use VLC Player to bypass the region coding and just play the movie straight off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way to get around it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we are at the end of this episode, but with the end, we decide what we're going to be watching next. I think, Zero, it's your turn. What are we watching next week?
So to kind of, I guess, pregame before the 4th of July weekend that will soon be upon us here in the U.S., I suggested the first Iron Man movie with Robert Downey Jr.
Now, we're doing this as it's an opposite of a patriotic movie, right? This isn't the patriotic movie we're watching. It's the exact opposite, like a non-patriotic movie to an extent. Am I right on that, or am I wrong?
I think, at least in my opinion, it is kind of patriotic because just with Iron Man, you have the history that just Stark and Stark Industries has always been sort of a weapons manufacturer for the U.S. government and everything.
Right.
And so just it's just kind of like peace, 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 peace by more superior firepower and weaponry, and of course just Stark just kind of being I guess you could say a patriotic hero, almost to his detriment in a sense, especially for anyone who hasn't seen it. There is a bit of a twist that sort of screws up his beliefs on just being patriotic to his country and everything. But I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Right. Well, let's be honest. Odds are you have seen it if you're an MCU fan. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch this movie after what the MCU has become, I think, is where my interest will lie in this. So that's it. Next week we'll be watching Iron Man, the film directed by Jon Favreau and starring Robert Downey Jr. and oh my god, I completely forgot who plays the villain in that. It's oh shit,
Jeff Bridges.
It's Jeff Bridges. That's right. Great actor too. Huh. I completely forgot about that. So yeah, we'll be watching Iron Man next week. So tune in next week as we watch Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Bridges. Until next week, I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we'll talk next time.